Hi, and welcome to the Seamless Blend, digital textile dialogues with Gabby and Jørgen. Our primary purpose is to educate and initiate discussions. The opinions expressed are solely our own and do not constitute professional advice or services. We invite contributions from our audience and maintain an open community on Discord.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back. So this week we are talking about skills. Actually, our episode is called Mind the Skills Gap. It's very relevant to all of those people that are in the UK who see Mind the Gap written in front of the tube. So it's quite location specific. My name is Gabby Hill, and I am co-founder of Ep5, a digital materials company, and also an academic and researcher. And I'm here with Jørgen. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jørgen. Well, as said, I'm working specifically with digital materials technology at Bandicoot Imaging. I've worked in the textiles manufacturing supply chain with different companies for about 10 years out of Hong Kong. And I'm now based in Copenhagen, still working with digital materials and DPC around the world and having these good conversations weekly with Gabby. We have a new format for this season. I just thought I'd mention this, even though we're on our fifth episode now. This new format is a little bit shorter than the first season. We're doing these shorter, a little bit more kind of specific conversations on just what's happening and what's happening kind of in the world of DPC and digital materials. And this week in particular, also we've chosen to focus on a very important and big topic, which is this skill gap, as Gabby mentioned. And I've spent, I would say, probably the last 2 weeks quite deep inside a bit of a research hole, where I've also been looking at, what are the dynamics of DPC and what's really happening. Are we still moving forward with, are brands still adopting DPC? Are they not? Why are they not? And so forth. And the skill gap, or just a need for skills and need for humans in that process that really understands both textiles and technology and many other things is popping up everywhere, and we just felt like this was a very relevant topic for today's discussion. So what do you feel like your experiences are so far with the skill gap, Gabby?
Very much so. Well, the first thing, just for anyone who's listening, who DPC is digital product creation, I'm just reminding anyone who, if you're listening, or if you haven't listened before, go back to the first ones, and then you can listen. Definitely a better idea. So Bureau as a company, we specialize in creating digital twins of physical materials. We are quite an interesting company because we are based between Bangladesh and the UK. The reason being is my co-founder is from Bangladesh, and she is really embedded in the supply chain. My background is all supply chain. I've done work in numerous different countries, but Bangladesh is where I've been working really for the longest, for the last 12 years. And when Nusrat and I set up our company, we specifically wanted to set it up at source. So it's digitizing materials at source. So their materials are created in Bangladesh, garments are created in Bangladesh. As a reminder to listeners, 80% of Bangladesh's exports are ready-made garments. It's a significant contribution to the growth of the country. Also, if we look at Bangladesh as a country, it has numerous universities, public and private universities, and a lot of those universities have fabric technology degrees, specializing in water, for example, dyeing, specializing in weaving, knitting. So you really can study with in-depth textiles, technology, and everything about running a textile mill and working within a garment manufacturer. What there is not right now is the digital side of education within the universities in Bangladesh, not because of want or desire or there a drive to be there, but it is really actually looking at having the educators available to teach in the universities, supporting the students with it might be like an extra credit course that they're doing outside of their standard study. So it's not like embedded in the curriculum currently as we speak. But what we are seeing is the garment manufacturers are really adopting 3D. Quite often the garment manufacturers you speak to have clo and they have browseware as well. So they're hedging their bets really on that. And where we see a real skills gap, and actually a gap in the market for us as well as a business, is supporting that bridge between university education, and the needs of the garment manufacturer. And that's what we're being asked by garment manufacturers. And we have been asked this for about 2.5, 3 years. This is not a new request. It's just we've never quite been positioning ourselves as that education provider within that space. But we're beginning to see this as a really, really important step that we need to take as a business. We believe in educating hopefully at university level, if not straight out of the university level, and widening the scope of those digital skills. And to reiterate, this is not replacing the textile skills, physical textile skills, or physical garment making skills. This is a complementary skill to digitize alongside the physical skills that you already understand. And that's what's really, really key, making sure that that digitization is complementary. So if we were having a debate right now, I would put forward the point that in Bangladesh currently, we have got thousands of graduates who have got clear pattern skills, clear textile knowledge skills, yet they haven't got the digitization skills they need. And then if I flip that and look at the UK educational environment, which I can talk about because I'm based in the UK and teach at a number of different universities, what we've got is a much lower manufacturing base, but lots of students being taught 3D technologies, fantastic for design and development, but not necessarily a reality for going into manufacturing. So it's this imbalance. In the UK, we've got lots of students learning those garment making, pattern making, and 3D textile skills, but we don't have the manufacturing base that needs it. In Bangladesh, we've got the manufacturing base that needs it, but the students aren't necessarily learning it in that space. And this isn't to be critical to either country or either academic system. This is more a case of reflecting on where we've seen the last 3 years. Where are those skills needed? You know, where should we as academics and educators, where should we be spending our time developing the skills? I would argue that it should be close to source with manufacturing and with the communities and the people who are working within those spaces. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of good thoughts in there already. And I think even, you know, like when we say skills, maybe even just to address almost like, you know, like what are these skills? Because we talked about, you know, like you need textile skills, you need pattern skills, you need, you know, the overall, maybe even fashion and creativity and, you know, like lots of things that goes into the product design and development in general. But you also need manufacturing skills, you need digital skills. And so I think there's definitely there's a natural divide, I think, as you had mentioned, between the manufacturing countries and where the brands are. And that divide is also becoming quite obvious, even as we're seeing in some of these kind of cases where you might come to a brand and the brand has, you know, great creative skills, maybe, you know, understand how to use 3D design software, but then we also have to be able to implement that into manufacturing or to kind of integrate it and link these together. And I think that's where we've talked a little bit about this before also, but I think just to touch upon that and even see something I've seen in particular on some of the recent travels, speaking to manufacturing companies, it seems like this is really happening at the moment, or more and more companies are realizing this. And in particular, garment vendors seem to be realizing that garment vendors are at a very important kind of close link point with the brands. And so in order for the brands to really fully utilize their digital design tools and to link them back to manufacturing, the manufacturers also has to be, you know, ready with the 3D tools. And we're seeing now even that a lot more garment manufacturers, at least I feel like I've seen recently and having spoken to some big garment manufacturers, we see that these garment manufacturers are starting to see this as a big opportunity. And so I'm also kind of voicing that out here because we see this, that some garment manufacturers are seeing this as an opportunity.
Yeah,
but I'm also kind of validating with a lot more of the research that this seems to be an actual opportunity. It's not just some people seeing it. It seems to be something that you know, every garment manufacturer really should be thinking about. And I think that's also for another reason, which is if you're a garment manufacturer, your main business is based around, you know, processing, cut and sew of material that you then bring into the factory. You cut and sew those materials, and you're essentially just offering a processing service, and then the garment comes out on the other end. And if you don't really consider any value added in that process, then you end up just competing on price. And so I think if garment manufacturers really want to remain competitive and want to kind of have a competitive edge in the future, it's very important in general to think about just to think about, what is the edge that you can build, and what are brands going to need more and more in the future. And coming back to this skill gap, again, I think, that garment manufacturers should be both bringing in, like, most garment manufacturers have a lot of the technical knowledge.
Yeah.
And now garment manufacturers are maybe missing some of the digital skills, but the digital skills, like we talk about the skill gap, and there's definitely a skill gap there, but there are so many people and companies out there that knows how this is working. So it's just a really great opportunity right now as well. I think, a skill gap is easy to think about something that isn't working so well, and like, oh, we need more skills, but the skills are out there to a certain degree, and there are companies and people like even like Bureau 555 here also, that can then help and educate and train and many others, where I think there's a unique opportunity for garment vendors.
And I think there's a point to note around that. I have worked with many different garment manufacturers, and not all garment manufacturers are created equal, but some of the best ones that I've worked with have these really, really innovative R&D centres, which if you're listening and you're not familiar with the supply chain, you might not realise. You might consider that garment manufacturer sounds like a really process-driven, service-driven business, but actually the ones who are really pushing the boundaries have R&D, research and development, beyond anything you've ever seen before. Actually, sometimes full micro factories developed just to research and development. So the skill level and the innovation that is happening there is so high already. And admittedly, a number of those manufacturers have already digitized. Okay, we understand that, but it is saying we've got lots of students coming out to work in our industry, and I believe we are doing them a disservice if we do not expose them to the digitization side, whether they are reviewing samples in 3D or reviewing textiles in 3D or creating them. It's going to come across their desk at some point in the future. So
exactly.
we might want to kind of like move on to the next topic now, because I've just seen the time.
No, exactly. No, but I think the next or like we talked a lot about it, and the next topic really is that, I think is this thing about DPC has been around for a while, 3D digital product creation, whatever you really, want to call it. It's been around for a number of years already. COVID has really helped DPC take off to a certain degree, at least, that a lot of brands started paying a lot more attention to these digital tools. We've probably seen that also many companies have struggled a little bit with the implementation, and it's been difficult. But I think we're also coming to a point where many companies are at a point right now where they're thinking, like, okay, this has been around for a while. We need to start we need to see impact on our own business. We need to, we need to speed this up and turn up the dial and do something about this. And this poses a little bit of a challenge that we just wanted to mention briefly. Is this almost like, are we really ready for speed? Is speed really working if, someone is doing it? Can we speed up are we still learning? Are we done learning? Are we ready to speed? And what do you think, Gabby?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on this. I mean, the first one is if we are learning a new process, how can we deliver it quickly? I think that those two things don't actually happen together at the same time. And when we're talking to large companies that want to digitize, we often hear that the problem they are trying to solve is that they essentially want to get their product into the market quicker. So they want to go from 4 weeks from design and onto shop floor, from, let's say, down to 3 weeks, and shave a week off. It's quite difficult to do that whilst overhauling your entire workflow process at the same time. So that's the first thought I have on speed and can we learn and get quick at the same time. The other thought I have around it is about sustainability and speed, because DPC has been presented as reducing resources, and that's why I got into this space. That is why I have gone all in on this. It's around reducing resources for myself within the design and development process. I saw firsthand how many textiles we were weaving up and knitting up that never saw the shop floor, that never saw the customer, that never even saw the end of life from a customer, because they were just generated for sampling process. So that's why I got into it. Fine. But if we are supporting a company to then increase the speed to market of their product, which in theory could mean that they could get more products to market quicker, how does that sit with sustainability? It's the elephant in the room, I think, around it. So
exactly. Yeah.
DPC can support businesses in lots of different ways, but
Mm,
I don't believe we can always say if you digitize, it will be a sustainable option. It
mm,
might make your business more efficient, yes,
mm,
but that efficiency does not necessarily mean a resource reduction. It might mean efficiency of time, it might mean efficiency of processes, and it might mean actually efficiency of labor down the line, but it doesn't necessarily, for your business, it doesn't necessarily mean an efficiency in relation to the number of raw materials and resources that you are procuring for your business. And that's where the tension is for me, because that's really why I got into it. And I'm not saying I'm walking away from it. It's just I'm being have a mirrors being held up, let's say, around sustainability and speed for me.
yeah. No, I think this part in particular, I think I think we both have had overlapping experiences with manufacturing, and in particular for me also, the reason why I even got into the textiles business in general was because I suddenly found myself standing in a big textiles factory in China, and just was very curious to learn more about it. So I think we've seen that overwhelming amount of sample materials, like textiles that's been made just for sample and prototype material, garment factories, similar, getting into this. But I also think that there's a very, very positive side to what's happening right now. Like you say that, like, can we, if we're going to be increasing speed to market and bring more products to market, how does then that influence sustainability, or what impact does that have on this whole concept that we built around sustainability? And I think that also that's where it's interesting with the new potential of what DPC can do for the fashion business model. This is probably too short of a discussion today to go into that entire aspect of it. Maybe that's something we can even come back to next time. But
I
that's
think
also
so. We should
where,
talk about the model.
yeah, like we could bring, like, yes, we can bring more products to market, and I think that's something we really have to consider, something we have to discuss. That's not directly sustainable in itself, I would say, or in alignment with, I think, what we really want to achieve there. But I do think that with DPC, we can also unlock these new business models, and by that meaning, can we bridge and integrate the technology more closely in between the fashion brands, or like the brands, retailers, and the factories? Can the factories use it more for direct to consumer? We've seen direct to consumer now also across many different businesses, many different ways. But can we enable or use the technology to enable some form of on-demand manufacturing with greater personalization or customization of the product? And if we can then do that, can we then manufacture less product, because all the products that are being manufactured specifically kind of to order, or someone that specifically wants them? And so the digital technology comes with pros and cons, and I almost feel like we might have to leave it at that and then go deeper into the pros and cons
I
later
will give
on.
you one sentence, which is
Yeah,
40% of product ends up as markdown, right? So at the end of the
yes,
day, that's kind of all we need to know around that. So if we can look at new business models that mean that doesn't happen, then we are just like win, 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 and we're back on
yeah,
mission track as far as I'm concerned.
exactly. I think the big takeaway is also that, like, we're not really matching supply and demand right now. And I'm reading different numbers, but almost like generally at least 30% of garments never really, hit the market. Even this goes to landfill, and there's a big mismatch there. And I think this is also a big part of the problem. But yeah, I think that was generally what we wanted to come into today. I think we've started and gotten a few new ideas that we're going to come back to in the next week. Do you have something exciting coming up before we
Well,
meet again next week, Abby?
it relates to new business models and systems
Oh,
thinking. So on Saturday, it's actually a closed event, but I'll talk about it next week as well. So basically at the Design Museum, I'm giving a presentation for the International Association of Clothing Designers and Executives with the sustainable
mm,
angle. So they've curated a set of businesses. It's called The Future Is Now: New Design Journeys. And what we're looking at is we've got The Mill, who have created rain-fed and regenerative cotton products and UK grown hemp products.
mm,
Bureau has digitized those materials and taken the impact data that the mill already had and entered that into our digital materials. That digital material is then being moved into essentially a system called XYZ Exchange, which is a
mhm,
supercharged tech pack system, which sort of looks at ownership and data and everything we really sort of like need within that
mhm,
space. And then the tech pack and the 3D designer obviously then designs the garment from that tech pack. And then 3D design goes to the microfactory. So we've got Manchester Fashion Institute coming down and talking about their microfactory. So this really is looking at like a completely new way of a business model. So direct from mill to market microfactory environment. So it's going to be really interesting. And we're presenting, I think, 3 different times to different groups. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of questions we get and feedback, which I will report back on next week.
No, very interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of interesting keywords there also with microfactories and talking about business, business models and all these things. Looking forward to hear more about that. I think, I think that's what's that's for today. We're going to come back again next week. I'm going to try to do a bit more research on some of these other things and probably try to share a little bit of that before we meet again next time. But maybe to close the gap on or come back to, not close the gap, but come back to the skill gap. I would just maybe share one last thing of I ended up in a factory quite coincidentally myself in China in 2014. And that was an incredible learning experience for me. If there are anyone out there that is coming from a fashion background or doing some learning these skills and want to bridge the skill gap a little bit more by learning more manufacturing, I think a lot of manufacturing companies are very open to taking on new people and students and people that want to learn. And so if you're proactive and if you're excited, there's a lot of opportunities out there to reach out to, and you're gonna have to probably put yourself in a different environment and maybe what you're used to if you in the UK or other places, but there's a lot to learn. So I highly encourage people to go out there and put yourself in a factory and learn. And I think we'll leave it at that. So thanks for joining and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Seamless Blend. If you enjoyed today's discussion, feel free to subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us and participate in our discussions on Discord. Let us know if you agree, disagree, or have any questions. Until next time, take care.